The rain bled neon across Koreatown's streets, and Monica Taylor was already 3 steps past him when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the symphony of car horns and karaoke spilling from basement bars. A child crying. Not the bratty wail of a tired toddler, but something raw, terrified. She stopped, her exhausted body protesting after a double shift, and turned. The boy couldn't have been older than 6, standing frozen on the corner in a navy designer suit that screamed money. His hands pressed tight over his ears, his whole body rocking as tears carved paths down his face. The crowd, dozens of people, flowed around him like water around a stone, eyes sliding past as if a traumatized child was just another Tuesday night inconvenience in Manhattan. New York at its finest. See something, ignore something, keep walking. But Monica had never been good at minding her own business. "Hey, sweetie." She knelt a respectful distance away, careful not to crowd him, her voice soft. "Are you lost?" The boy didn't respond. His eyes stayed squeezed shut, his small chest heaving with each shuddering breath. She tried Chinese next. She'd picked up enough working in Koreatown to manage basic phrases, but got nothing. His rocking intensified, his distress climbing like a siren. Then Monica noticed it. The label inside his collar, visible when his jacket shifted. Kingyu. Korean characters. Her mind flickered back. Seoul. The special needs school where she'd volunteered. The late nights studying Hangul by the light of convenience store signs. The way certain sounds, certain rhythms, could cut through the noise of panic. She switched languages, her voice dropping into the gentle, melodic cadence she'd learned worked best with overwhelmed children. Quintana. 안전해요. It's okay. You're safe. The boy's eyes snapped open. 숨 쉬자. 천천히. Let's breathe. Slowly. Monica demonstrated, her hands moving in the calming pattern she'd practiced 100 times in another life. 나랑 같이. 하나, 둘, 셋. Together with me. 1, 2, 3. She watched his small chest stutter, then sink with hers. His hands slowly lowered from his ears. The terror in his dark eyes shifted. Not gone, but less. 이준이에요, he whispered, his voice barely cutting through the rain. I'm Ijun. 안녕, 이준아. Monica felt something loosen in her own chest. 나는 모니카예요. Hello, Ijun. I'm Monica. She didn't see the black SUVs until they were already there. Didn't notice the men in tailored suits moving through the crowd with military precision until a shadow fell across them both. A presence so heavy, it made the air feel thick. Monica looked up. The man standing above them seemed to pull darkness around him like a cloak. Sharp, brutal features, ink crawling up his neck from beneath an expensive collar, and eyes. God, those eyes, that assessed her with the cold calculation of someone who made life-or-death decisions before most people had their morning coffee. Behind him, 4 more men formed a wall of expensive fabric and barely concealed violence. Iana! A woman's voice cracked through the tension. Frantic, desperate. She pushed through the wall of security, tears streaming down her face. But Ijun didn't run to her. He looked at Monica. Uncertainty flickering in his small face. Sumueo? Monica asked gently. Is that your aunt? Ijun nodded, and only then did he move, though he glanced back at Monica twice as the woman, his aunt, gathered him into her arms. The man with the dangerous eyes hadn't moved. He studied Monica with an intensity that made her skin prickle, his gaze cataloging everything from her worn sneakers to the name tag she'd forgotten to remove from her stained uniform. The silence stretched. Rain drummed against expensive car roofs. You speak Korean. His voice was smoke over gravel, his English perfect but accented. I do. Where did you learn? Monica stood slowly, suddenly aware she was surrounded, but refusing to show the fear threading through her veins. Seoul. I taught English there for a year. Something shifted in his expression. Not softness. Never softness, but a recalibration. He glanced at Ijun, who was still watching Monica even as his aunt held him, then back at her. Kim Min-soo. He didn't offer his hand. It was a statement, not an introduction. He expected her to know the name. She didn't. But she nodded anyway. You calmed him. Not a question. There was something beneath the words. Disbelief, maybe. wonder even. No one outside family has been able to do that since. He cut himself off, his jaw tightening. Then, "What's your name?" Monica Taylor." Min-soo pulled out his phone, typed something with quick, precise movements, then looked at one of his men. His voice dropped, but she heard it clearly. A command that made her blood run cold. "Find everything about her. Where she lives, where she works, who she knows, everything." His eyes returned to Monica, and for the first time since she'd knelt beside that crying child, she felt genuine, bone-deep fear. "We'll be in touch, Miss Taylor." Then they were gone, disappearing into the rain-soaked night as quickly as they'd materialized, leaving Monica standing alone on the corner, her heart hammering against her ribs. She stood there for a long moment, rain soaking through her jacket. What the hell did I just walk into? Monica made it back to her studio apartment in Queens on autopilot, her mind replaying the encounter on an endless loop. Those eyes, that command, find everything about her. She should have felt good about helping a lost child. She should have gone to bed satisfied that she'd done the right thing. Instead, she triple-checked her locks and Googled Kim Min-soo, New York. The results made her stomach drop. Thank you for watching, my loves. If this chapter pulled you into the shadows with me, hit like, subscribe, and tell me your thoughts below. Every comment helps this story reach the people who need it. Rest your heart for now, because the next part goes even deeper. And trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. The address Min-soo had sent led to a building in Midtown that looked like it could swallow entire fortunes without a trace. Monica stood on the sidewalk for 3 full minutes, her reflection warping in the gleaming glass facade, before she forced herself through the revolving doors. The lobby was all marble and cold light. A security guard with an earpiece waved her toward a private elevator without asking her name. They already knew she was coming. The ride to the top floor felt like ascending into thinner air. Her ears popped, her pulse hammered against her throat. When the doors opened, she stepped into a penthouse office where the city noise had been surgically removed, replaced by a silence so complete it felt oppressive. Engineered, controlled. The space was vast and minimalist. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Manhattan that made her feel small, insignificant. And there, silhouetted against all that gray light, stood Kim Min-soo behind a desk the size of her entire apartment. He didn't stand, didn't acknowledge her entrance, just watched her walk toward him across what felt like a mile of polished concrete floor, her worn sneakers squeaking softly with each step. Monica's mouth was dry. She could feel his eyes tracking her movement, cataloging every nervous gesture, every tell. She stopped a few feet from the desk, close enough to see the manila folder sitting in its center, far enough to maintain some illusion of safety. "Sit." His voice cut through the silence like a blade. She sat. Min-soo leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. The light behind him made it impossible to read his expression. "Ijuan's mother was my sister. 2 years ago she was murdered in front of him. A bullet meant for me found her instead." The words were clinical, sharp, stripped of everything human. He was 4 years old. He watched her die. Min-soo's tone didn't waver. Before that night he was verbal, social. A bright, happy child who loved to paint and ask questions about everything. After, a pause, the first crack in his composure. He stopped speaking to anyone outside immediate family. His therapists call it selective mutism triggered by severe trauma. He has sensory sensitivities, panic attacks, night terrors. He trusts no one. Monica's chest ached. She thought of that little boy rocking on the corner, hands over his ears, drowning in a sea of indifferent strangers. Until you. Min-soo's eyes fixed on her now, sharp and assessing. "You spoke to him for 3 minutes. And he responded." He laughed. "He took your hand. That hasn't happened in 2 years, Miss Taylor." He reached forward and opened the folder. Monica's stomach dropped. It was her life. Dissected, laid bare. Her undergraduate transcript from Portland State. Her teaching certification from the Soul program. Copies of her apartment lease, her credit card statements, her mother's death certificate, her student loan balance, $62,000. Highlighted in yellow. Her mother's medical debt that she'd inherited, $34,000. Circled in red. "You worked 2 jobs to put yourself through college." Min-soo's voice was neutral, reciting facts. You majored in linguistics with a focus on Korean language and culture. After graduation, you taught English in Seoul for 14 months and volunteered at a special needs school on weekends. You returned to New York when your mother was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She died 6 months later. You've been working double shifts at a Korean fusion restaurant in Koreatown for the past year, barely making rent. Each word was a violation, a scalpel cutting into her privacy. Monica's hands clenched in her lap. Her face felt hot. You had no right. I have every right. He closed the folder. The moment you touched my nephew, you became a person of interest. I protect what's mine, Miss Taylor. That requires information. I'm not yours. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, perhaps. Or recognition of a challenge. Not yet. He slid a document across the desk. I'm offering you a position as Ijeon's private caregiver and cultural educator. $30,000 per month. Health insurance included. All taxes paid. Completely legal employment. The number hung in the air between them like a golden noose. $30,000 a month. Monica's vision blurred. That was more than she made in a year. That was freedom from the debt crushing her. That was breathing room. That was a life. You would work 4 afternoons per week at my home in Brooklyn Heights. Your responsibilities would include language instruction, sensory integration activities, cultural education, and providing emotional support. You would help him rebuild trust with the world. Why me? Because he responded to you. Because you have the training. Because you speak his mother's language in a way that comforts him. Minsu's gaze was relentless. Because I've researched every qualified candidate in this city. And you're the only one who made my nephew feel safe. The violation burned in her throat. He'd stripped her bare, examined every wound, every failure, every desperate choice. He knew exactly what buttons to push. But God, that number. $30,000 a month. I need to think about it. You have 24 hours. Monica stood on shaking legs. You can't buy people. Minsu finally stood, and she was struck again by his presence. The way he seemed to own the space around him. I'm not buying you, Miss Taylor. I'm offering you a choice. Take it or leave it. But know this. If you walk away, I'll ensure your debts are paid regardless. Call it gratitude for helping my nephew. You'll never see us again. It should have been comforting. It felt like a threat. She left without another word. Lisa met her at their usual spot. A dive bar in Queens where the drinks were cheap and the lighting was forgiving. Monica ordered a double whiskey and downed it before she said a word. That bad? Lisa asked. Worse. Monica's hands trembled as she explained. The surveillance, the file, the offer, the obscene amount of money. He knows everything, Lisa. Everything. My credit score, my mom's medical records, probably what I had for breakfast. Jesus. Lisa flagged down the bartender for another round. This is blood money, Monica. You know that, right? Working for him makes you complicit in whatever he does. He's a child, Lisa. Ijun is just a traumatized little boy who needs help. And his uncle is a crime lord who probably kills people before lunch. Monica flinched. I know. Do you? Lisa's voice rose. Because it sounds like you're already rationalizing this. That money is tainted. That family is dangerous. You could end up disappeared, Monica. Or worse. What's worse than drowning in debt? What's worse than working myself to death and still not making a dent? What's worse than knowing I could help a child but choosing not to because I'm afraid? The words came out harsher than she intended. Lisa's expression softened. I'm afraid for you. This man. He's not offering you a job. He's offering you a leash. Maybe. Monica stared into her glass. But maybe it's a leash I can live with. She called the number Min-Soo had provided at 9 a.m. the next morning. Miss Taylor. His voice was unsurprised. He'd known she would call. I'll do it. But I have conditions. Name them. I'm only his caregiver. Nothing else. I want a contract. I want everything in writing. And I maintain my own apartment and independence. A pause. Then, agreed. With one addition. Her stomach tightened. What addition? You'll have 24-hour security. For your protection and ours. I don't need. It's not negotiable. His tone left no room for argument. You work with my nephew. You enter my world. That comes with protection whether you want it or not. The car will pick you up at 2 p.m. today. We'll finalize the contract. He hung up before she could protest. The penthouse office felt even colder the second time. Minsu had the contract ready, thick and official, every clause outlined in precise legal language. Monica read it twice, her hands shaking slightly as she turned each page. Everything was there. Her salary, her responsibilities, the termination clauses, a confidentiality agreement that made her pulse spike, an acknowledgement that she understood the unique circumstances of the family. I want to add something. Her voice was steadier than she felt. I am only Ijun's caregiver. I'm not part of your organization. I'm not involved in your business. My role is limited to the child. Minsu's lips twitched in something that might have been a smile on a warmer man. You are already involved, Miss Taylor. You just don't know it yet. What's that supposed to mean? It means the moment you spoke Korean to my nephew on a street corner, you became part of his world, and his world is mine. He pushed a pen across the desk. Sign it or don't, but stop pretending you have more control than you do. The words were brutal in their honesty. Monica picked up the pen. It was heavy, expensive, cold. She pressed the tip to the signature line and paused. This was it. The moment everything changed. The pen scratched across the paper, black ink on white. The sound filled the silent office like a lock clicking shut, like a door closing, like a choice that couldn't be unmade. Minsu's eyes never left her hand. When she finished, he took the contract and slid it into a drawer. Welcome to the family, Miss Taylor. The words should have been warm. Instead, they felt like a brand. The car that picked Monica up 3 days later was the same black SUV that had followed her home. Tyler, the driver, was a wall of muscle and silence. His eyes kind despite the gun she knew he carried. He didn't try to make conversation. She was grateful. Brooklyn Heights at midday was quiet money, tree-lined streets and brownstones that had seen generations of wealth. The townhouse sat behind a wrought iron fence, its facade elegant and understated. It looked like old New York, like stability, like a home that had never known struggle. The interior smelled of lemon oil and old wood, of expensive things carefully maintained. And underneath that, something warmer. The rich, complex aroma of Korean spices drifting from the kitchen. Mrs. Cho's cooking, she would learn. Gochujang and doenjang, garlic and sesame. The foyer had high ceilings and hardwood floors that gleamed. The shadows in the hallways were deep and cool, even in the afternoon light. It was beautiful. It was a fortress. Miss Taylor. Jihai emerged from a doorway, elegant in tailored black, her hair pulled into a severe bun. Ijun's aunt, Minsu's sister. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, cold. I'll show you around. The tour was efficient and distant. Living room, dining room, kitchen where Mrs. Cho, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a stern mouth, nodded at her briefly. Upstairs to Ijun's room, a space filled with toys he didn't play with, books he didn't read, windows that overlooked a garden he didn't visit. He spends most of his time here or in the sensory room. His voice was carefully neutral. We've tried everything. Therapists, specialists. He tolerates them but doesn't respond. Monica studied the room. The bed was made military tight. The toys were organized by size and color. Everything was perfect. Sterile. Where is he now? Downstairs. In the den. His expression flickered. Worry maybe. Or resignation. He's been anxious since Minsu told him you were coming. He remembers you. Something warm and painful bloomed in Monica's chest. They found him in a room off the kitchen, sitting on the floor with a pile of wooden blocks untouched beside him. He was rocking slightly, his hands pressed together, his dark eyes fixed on nothing. Monica knelt a few feet away. Annyeong, Ijuna. Hello, Ijun. His rocking stopped. His eyes found hers. Nakyoke? Do you remember me? She kept her voice soft, musical. Piodannar? The rainy day? A flicker of recognition. His hands unclenched. Monica reached into her bag and pulled out the drawing she'd made. Stick figures of a woman and a boy, breathing together, numbered 1, 2, 3 in Korean. She'd drawn it on her lunch break, using crayons she'd bought at a drugstore. Ijun stared at it. Then, slowly, he reached out. His small fingers touched the paper, tracing the figures. That's us, Monica said in Korean. breathing together. You were very brave. Biga musasayo. I was scared of the rain. His voice was a whisper, rusty with disuse. I know. Rain can be scary when you're alone. But you're not alone now. She heard a sharp intake of breath. Jihai stood in the doorway, her hand flying to her mouth. Tears gleamed in her eyes. Monica's own breath caught. She hadn't made him speak. She'd just given him a reason to want to. The following weeks fell into a rhythm. Monica arrived each afternoon, and she and Ijun created their own world on the floor of that den. Picture cards, sensory bottles filled with glitter and oil, simple songs in Korean. She learned his triggers. Sudden sounds, unexpected touch, transitions without warning. She learned what soothed him. Deep pressure, repetitive motions, the sound of her voice speaking his mother's language. She learned that he loved the color blue, that he hummed when he felt safe, that his smile, when it finally broke through, was like sunlight after a storm. Naabi, butterfly. He pointed at the picture card, his pronunciation careful. Maja, Nabi, that's right, butterfly. Monica clapped softly. Ijunin dokdokeo. Ijin is smart. His smile widened, then he laughed. A small, rusty sound that cut through the afternoon silence like a bell. Jihai, passing by the doorway, stopped so abruptly she nearly stumbled. Her hand went to her mouth again, and Monica saw tears streaming down her face. That sound, that laugh. It was the sound of life returning to a tomb. Minsu observed from doorways. Monica felt his presence before she saw him. That particular quality of silence that followed him like a shadow. He never interrupted, never spoke, just watched. It should have made her uncomfortable. Instead, she found herself hyper-aware of his gaze, of the way he tracked every interaction, every small breakthrough. He was cataloging her, learning her, the same way he'd dissected her life in that file. On her third week, after Ijun had been put to bed, Minsu appeared in the doorway of the den. Come with me. It wasn't a request. Monica followed him through the house, up a staircase she hadn't explored, down a hallway where family photographs lined the walls. She glimpsed a younger Minsu, a woman who must have been his sister, Ijun's mother, laughing in the sunlight. He stopped at a door and produced a key. The room beyond was untouched time. The scent hit her first. Turpentine, old dust, and underneath that, the faint floral ghost of perfume. Lavender, maybe, or jasmine. It was an art studio. Canvases lined the walls, some finished, some abandoned mid-stroke. Brushes stood in jars like sleeping soldiers. Paint tubes cluttered a wooden table. Everything was coated in a fine layer of dust, as if the room itself was holding its breath. This was my sister's space. Minsu's voice was quiet. No one has touched it since she died. I had it cleaned once, but couldn't bring myself to change anything. Monica's chest tightened. This was a shrine, a museum of grief. You mentioned once that you used to paint, in your file. He moved to the window, his back to her. She would have wanted this room used. She believed art was meant to be shared, not hoarded. The offer was intimate, devastating. He wasn't just giving her a room. He was handing her a piece of his loss, watching to see if she could hold it without breaking. Monica walked to the table, her fingers trailing over the dusty surface. I haven't painted in years. Not since my mother got sick. Why? Because it felt selfish. Because she was dying and I was trying to keep us both alive and there was no time for anything beautiful. The confession slipped out unbidden. Minsu turned. The fading light cut across his face, softening nothing. My sister painted the day she died. That canvas there. He gestured to an unfinished landscape, vibrant with color and life. Was on her easel when they came for us. She never got to finish it. Monica looked at the painting. The brushstrokes were confident, joyful. The kind of work created by someone who believed they had time. Use this space, Minsu said. Finish her painting or start your own, but don't let it stay a tomb. Then he left her standing there, surrounded by ghosts, her heart hammering with a terror she couldn't name. This fragile, dangerous trust. It felt like a test she didn't know how to pass. Monica started coming earlier. She told herself it was for Ijun, to spend more time building his routines, but that was only partly true. The townhouse had begun to feel less like a fortress and more like something dangerously close to home. She painted in the late afternoons, after Ijun went down for his rest. The studio became her sanctuary, the smell of turpentine and linseed oil, a comfort she'd forgotten she craved. Her hands remembered the movements, mixing colors, the drag of bristles on canvas, the meditation of creation. Minsu's sister had been talented. Her unfinished works spoke of a woman who saw beauty in violence, who understood that light only mattered because of shadow. Monica found herself speaking to the paintings, to the ghost who'd left them behind. "You would have liked your son's laugh," she whispered to the empty room. "It sounds like hope." She would have. Monica spun. Minsu stood in the doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The ink on his forearms was dark and intricate, dragons and chrysanthemums, symbols she didn't fully understand. He looked different like this, less kingpin, more man. "I didn't hear you come in. You were focused." He moved into the room, his eyes on the canvas she'd been working on, an abstract piece, all dark blues and violent reds. "You're good, better than I expected. Thanks, I think." A ghost of a smile. It wasn't meant as an insult. He picked up one of his sister's brushes, turning it over in his hands. She used to say painting was the only time she felt truly free. Everything else was performance, family, duty. But here, he gestured at the room. Here she was, just herself. Monica's throat tightened. What was she like? Fierce, stubborn, too brave for her own good. His voice was soft, edged with old grief. She wanted out. From the family, the business, all of it. She thought she could build a normal life for Ijun somewhere far from this world. The confession hung between them. Is that what got her killed? Minsu's jaw tightened. That's a dangerous question, Miss Taylor. Monica, you've stripped my life bare and made me part of your household. The least you can do is use my first name. Another almost smile. Monica, then. The sound of her name in his mouth did something to her pulse. They stood in the fading light, the studio suddenly feeling smaller, more intimate. Monica became acutely aware of the space between them, of the way his eyes tracked her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "I should go help Mrs. Cho with dinner," she said, breaking the spell. "Stay." It wasn't a command. It was closer to a plea. Monica stayed. It became a pattern. Late afternoons in the studio, Minsu appearing like clockwork, shedding the armor of his role piece by piece. They talked about Seoul, about the year she'd spent teaching in Gangnam. He'd been there once, years ago, for business he didn't elaborate on. "The city felt alive," she said, mixing cadmium red into burnt umber. "Like it was buzzing with possibility. I'd never felt more present in my life." "Is that when you learned about autism care?" "Yeah, the school where I volunteered. It changed everything I thought I knew about communication, about patience, about meeting people where they are instead of demanding they meet you." Minsu watched her work, his presence a steady weight. "You're good with Ijun because you see him. Not his trauma, not his limitations. Just him. He's easy to see. He's this brilliant, sensitive kid trapped inside his fear. You've given him his voice back. That's not small." Monica set down her brush. "I haven't given him anything. I just made space for him to find it himself." The silence stretched. Minsu moved closer, close enough that she could smell him, sandalwood, and something darker, more complex. He studied her canvas, his shoulder nearly touching hers. "You see the world as it is," he said quietly. "All the violence and beauty mixed together. Don't you?" "I see the violence, the beauty I have to be reminded of." Their eyes met. The air felt charged, dangerous. Mrs. Cho's voice echoed from downstairs, calling them for dinner, and the spell broke. One evening, 2 weeks later, Monica found herself alone in the kitchen long after everyone else had gone to bed. She'd stayed late finishing a lesson plan for Ijon, and the house had fallen into its nighttime silence, a different quality of quiet than the daytime, heavier and more intimate. She was heating leftover jjigae when Minsu appeared. He looked different, tired. The perfect control he wore like armor had slipped. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, his hair disheveled. He'd been in his study, she realized, working until exhaustion finally won. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Never can." He moved to the counter, reaching for a bowl from the upper cabinet at the same moment she did. Their hands collided. The contact was electric, a spark that traveled up her arm and settled somewhere dangerous in her chest. Monica yanked her hand back as if burned. Minsu's fingers lingered on the bowl, his eyes fixed on her. You're afraid of me. I'm cautious around you. There's a difference. Is there? He set the bowl down slowly, his movements deliberate. Tell me, Monica, what scares you more? What I do in the dark, or the fact that you're still here despite knowing? The question was a blade, sharp and precise. I'm here for Ijun. Are you? Her heart hammered. Yes. He moved closer. Not threatening, but the space between them shrank until she could feel the heat radiating from him, until his presence filled her senses. You're a terrible liar. And you're arrogant. Honest. His hand lifted, hovering near her face but not quite touching. I see you, Monica. The way you watch me when you think I'm not looking. The way your breath catches when I'm near. You're terrified and fascinated in equal measure. You're imagining things. Am I? She should move. Should step back, maintain distance, remember who he was and what he did in the shadows. Instead, she tilted her chin up, defiant. What do you want from me? Everything. The word was a caress and a threat. But I'll settle for honesty. The steam from the forgotten pot rose between them, and the domesticity of the moment, standing in his kitchen in the dead of night, felt forbidden, transgressive. Monica's lips parted. I don't know what I feel. That's more honest than most people give me. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, the touch feather-light but searing. Her eyes fluttered closed. This was wrong, dangerous, a line that shouldn't be crossed. His lips met hers before thought could catch up to action. The kiss was nothing like she'd imagined. It wasn't gentle or testing. It was collision, inevitability. Two people who'd been circling each other finally giving in to gravity. He tasted like whiskey and control, like power and something desperately, humanly vulnerable. Monica's hands found his chest, felt his heartbeat thundering as wildly as hers. The kiss deepened, his hand sliding into her hair, tilting her head to taste her more thoroughly. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. This is a mistake, she whispered. Probably. His voice was rough, wrecked. Are you going to run? Every instinct screamed yes. Instead, she kissed him again. The memory of that kiss haunted her for days. They didn't speak about it, didn't acknowledge what had shifted, but the air between them was different now. Charged, dangerous, inévitable. Monica tried to focus on Ijun, on the progress they were making. He'd started speaking more, venturing questions in halting Korean. He asked her to read him stories. He showed her his favorite toys. But in quiet moments, she found herself replaying the taste of whiskey, the roughness of Minsu's hands, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. She was in the studio one afternoon when she heard it. Jihai's voice from the study down the hall, sharp with anguish. You can't keep lying about why she died. Monica froze, her brush suspended mid-stroke. The truth won't bring her back. Minsu's voice cold. But it's the truth. She was trying to leave, and they killed her for it. Ijun deserves to know his mother wanted out. Ijun deserves to remember his mother as a victim of circumstance, not as a woman who betrayed the family. Betrayed. The word hit Monica like a fist to the chest. She didn't betray anyone. She just wanted a normal life for her son, and her desire for normalcy nearly brought the feds down on all of us. Her leaving would have meant exposure. They didn't kill her because of me. They killed her because of what she knew and what she threatened to do with it. The silence that followed was suffocating. Monica's hand shook. The brush slipped, clattering to the floor. The voices in the study cut off abruptly. She stood there, paint-stained and trembling, as the full weight of the truth settled over her like ash. Minsu's sister hadn't been collateral damage. She'd been a liability. And Minsu, the man who'd kissed her, who'd let her into his home and his grief, had built this entire sanctuary on a foundation of lies. The study door opened. Minsu stood in the hallway, his eyes finding hers immediately. She saw the moment he realized she'd heard everything. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. Monica. She turned and walked away. Monica avoided him for 3 days. She came to the house, worked with Ijun, and left before Minsu returned from whatever dark business kept him away. She ignored his texts, declined his calls. But on the 4th day, he was waiting. She found him in the study that had become the site of her disillusionment. the room that smelled of rich leather and his cologne, a scent she'd come to associate with danger and desire in equal measure. "We need to talk." His voice was flat, empty of the warmth she'd begun to hear in unguarded moments. "I don't think there's anything to say. You heard Ji-hai. You know what my sister tried to do." Monica's hands clenched. "You built this whole narrative. The grieving family, the innocent victim, the devoted uncle protecting his traumatized nephew. But it was a lie. She was killed because she wanted out, and you let everyone believe it was collateral damage. Would the truth have made it better?" His control was fracturing, ice cracking under pressure. Would it have helped Ijun to know his mother chose leaving over staying? That her desire for escape is what put the target on her back? It would have been honest. Honesty is a luxury people like you afford yourselves. He stood, and suddenly he was the kingpin again, all sharp edges and cold assessment. "In my world, the truth is a weapon. I chose to give my nephew a story he could live with. A lie he could live with. Yes." No apology in his voice. "I've killed, Monica. I've ordered deaths. I've done things that would make you sick. I rule by fear because fear is the only currency that matters in my world. My sister forgot that. She thought love was enough. She thought she could walk away because she wanted better for her son." He moved toward her, his presence overwhelming in the dim room. "She was naive. She was reckless. And she paid for it. You're saying she deserved it. I'm saying choices have consequences." His voice dropped, dangerous. "She made hers, I made mine, and now you have to make yours." Monica's breath came too fast. "What does that mean?" "It means you know what I am now. The man who kissed you, the man whose nephew you've come to care for. He's the same man who lies, who kills, who does whatever is necessary to protect what's his." He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could see the shadows in his eyes. "You can leave. I'll pay your debt. I'll ensure you're safe. But you walk out that door, you never see Ijun again. You never step foot in this world." The ultimatum hung between them like a blade. "That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair." His hand lifted, hovering near her face, not quite touching. "But it's the choice you have. Run from the monster or stay and accept what I am." Monica's heart was a frantic bird beating against her ribs. The moral line she'd always relied on, the clear division between right and wrong, good and evil, had become a chasm at her feet. She thought of Ijun's laugh, of the way he'd started calling her Son Sen Yeme with something that sounded like hope, of Ji-hai's tears when her nephew finally spoke, of Mrs. Cho's quiet acceptance, of the family that had formed around her like a constellation. She thought of Min-soo in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, looking almost human, of his hands gentle on her face, of the kiss that had tasted like hunger and control and something desperately, impossibly real. And she thought of his sister's unfinished canvas, of a woman who'd wanted out and paid the ultimate price. "I don't forgive you for lying," she said quietly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I'm not leaving him." Something shifted in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. He hadn't expected her to defy him, hadn't expected her to choose this. The cage, the monster, the impossible moral compromise. "You should be afraid of me, Monica." "I am." Her voice steadied. "I'm terrified of you. Of what you do. Of what staying here means. But I'm more afraid of what it would mean to walk away. I'm not doing this for you, Min-soo. I'm doing it for that little boy who finally learned to laugh again. I'm doing it because, for the first time in years, I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be." She took a step closer, closing the distance between them, her chin tilted up in defiance. "So yes, I'm staying, but don't mistake that for acceptance. I'll call you out when you're wrong. I'll fight you when you try to control too much. And I won't pretend that what you do is justifiable just because I care about your family." For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then his hand finally touched her face, his palm cupping her jaw, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met," he said quietly, "or the most foolish. Maybe both." His lips found hers, and this kiss was different from the first. Slower, deeper, weighted with the knowledge of what she was choosing, what she was accepting. When they finally pulled apart, Monica's heart was still racing, but the terror had transformed into something else, something darker and more complicated. She'd chosen the cage, and the monster inside it. And God help her. She wasn't sure she'd ever want to leave. The world outside the townhouse had shifted. Monica felt it the moment she stepped onto the street, that prickle of awareness, the sense of being watched. The gilded cage she'd chosen had become a shield, and leaving it meant exposing herself to predators she was only beginning to understand. Tyler drove her everywhere now. To the small Korean market 3 blocks away where she bought ingredients for Ijun's favorite snacks. To the library where she checked out picture books in Hangul. Even the short walk from the car to the entrance felt orchestrated, controlled. "Is this really necessary?" she asked him one afternoon, watching him scan the street before opening her door. His expression was kind but immovable. Mr. Kim doesn't take chances with what matters to him. What matters to him? The words settled in her chest, warm and terrifying. She'd become visible. Minsu's woman, though they'd never discussed labels or definitions, in his world, the kiss had been a declaration. The choice to stay, a vow. And now she wore that visibility like a target. The first real threat came on a Tuesday afternoon at the grocery store. Monica was in the produce section, selecting apples for Ijun. He'd eat them if she cut them into precise eighths. No skin, when she felt it. That particular quality of attention that made her skin crawl. A man stood too close. Mid-40s, expensive suit. Smile that didn't reach his eyes. He picked up a melon, examining it with theatrical care while his gaze slid over her like oil. "Beautiful day," he said in accented English. Mandarin, she thought. Or Cantonese. Monica shifted away, her hand tightening on the shopping basket. "Excuse me, you're Monica Taylor?" Not a question. His smile widened, showing too many teeth. "You work for Kim Min-soo, taking care of his nephew." Her blood iced. Tyler was 2 aisles over, checking the perimeter. She could scream, run, but her body had locked into place. "I don't know what you're talking about. Ijun is a beautiful child." The man took a step closer, invading her space until she could smell the staleness of his breath, cigarettes, and something acrid. Such a shame he's already lost his mother. It would be terrible if something happened to his. "What do you call yourself? Nanny? Teacher?" The threat was explicit, visceral. Monica's throat closed. 5 years old, the man continued, his voice conversational, pleasant. "So vulnerable at that age, so easy to hurt. Get away from me." Her voice came out strangled. "Mr. Zhao sends his regards to Min-soo." He reached out as if to touch her arm, and Monica flinched backward, knocking into a display of oranges. Fruit tumbled to the floor, the sound explosive in the quiet store. Tyler appeared like a ghost materializing from shadow. His hand closed on the man's wrist, his grip precise and crushing. "Walk away, now." The man's smile never wavered, but something vicious flickered in his eyes. "Just delivering a message." He pulled his hand free, adjusting his cuff. "Tell Min-soo. The Jade Phoenix remembers his sister. We remember everyone he's loved." Then he was gone, disappearing into the afternoon crowd. Monica's legs gave out. Tyler caught her, his arm steady around her shoulders, guiding her toward the door. "We're leaving. I'm calling it in." The drive back to the townhouse was a blur. Monica's hands shook in her lap, her mind replaying the threat over and over. Ijun is a beautiful child. It would be terrible if something happened. Min-soo was waiting when they arrived. He stood in the foyer, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid-fire Korean. When he saw her face, he ended the call mid-sentence. "What happened?" Not a question, a command. Tyler explained in clipped, professional tones. The approach, the threat, the name, Zhao. Monica watched Min-soo's face as he listened, watched the transformation that had fascinated and terrified her from the beginning, the passion she'd glimpsed in quiet moments. The man who kissed her in the kitchen, who spoke softly to his nephew, evaporated like steam. What replaced it was something ancient and pitiless, a drop in temperature so severe it felt physical. He looked at her, but his eyes were far away, calculating. His pupils had dilated, black swallowing dark brown. This was the kingpin. The man who ruled by fear, the monster she'd agreed to love. "Go upstairs," he said quietly. "Stay with Ijun. Don't leave his room. Min-soo. Now." The word was absolute. Monica fled. From Ijun's room, she heard it begin. The low, rapid Korean as Min-soo made calls, the silent arrival of men. She recognized some from that first rainy night. They moved through the house like smoke, gathering in the study, their voices a low rumble of violence barely contained. Ijun sensed her tension. He climbed into her lap, his small body warm and solid, and pressed his forehead against her shoulder. Kinshinayo? Are you okay? Nay, Quintana. Yes, I'm okay. The lie tasted bitter. But Ijun hummed softly, the sound he made when he felt safe, and something in Monica's chest cracked. This child. This beautiful, fragile child who'd already lost so much. The Jade Phoenix had threatened him to get to Minsu, had used a 5-year-old as a weapon. The rage that bloomed in her was hot and righteous. She understood in that moment why Minsu did what he did, why he ruled by fear. Because in a world where children were leverage, where love was a vulnerability to exploit, you protected what was yours with absolute brutality or you lost everything. The moral line she'd been clinging to dissolved like ash. Minsu didn't come to her that night. She heard him leave near midnight, the convoy of vehicles pulling away with military precision. The house felt empty without him, hollow despite Mrs. Cho's presence in the kitchen, despite Jihai's silent vigil in the living room. Monica stayed with Ijun until he slept, then wandered the halls like a ghost. She ended up in the studio, surrounded by his sister's unfinished canvases, and finally let herself cry. She cried for the life she'd left behind, for the moral certainty she'd traded for this dark, complicated love. She cried for Ijun's mother, who'd tried to escape and paid with her life. She cried for herself, for choosing a man whose hands were stained with blood. When Minsu finally returned near dawn, she was still there. Sitting on the floor, her back against the wall, exhausted and raw. He appeared in the doorway like a specter. His shirt was untucked, his hair disheveled, his knuckles were bruised. "It's handled," he said, his voice scraped empty. "Zhao and his lieutenant won't be delivering any more messages. The Jade Phoenix knows what happens when they threaten mine." Monica stood on shaking legs. "What did you do?" "What I always do." His eyes met hers, and they were hollow, desolate. "What I'll always do to keep you safe." She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him. He stood rigid for a heartbeat, then collapsed into her embrace, his face buried in her neck, his breath hot and unsteady against her skin. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry you had to see this world. I'm sorry I pulled you into it. I chose it," Monica said against his hair. "I chose you." And in the pre-dawn light of his dead sister's studio, they held each other like survivors of a shipwreck, clinging to the only solid thing in a violent, churning sea. 3 days of peace. 3 days where Monica almost believed the threat had passed, that Minsu's retaliation had been enough to buy them safety. Then Jihai suggested an outing. "Ijun needs normalcy," she said over breakfast, her voice bright with forced cheer. "There's a children's museum in Manhattan, Korean cultural exhibits. He'd love it." Minsu studied his sister with narrowed eyes. "I'll send a full security detail." "It's a museum, Appa." Jihai's smile was strained. "We'll be fine. Tyler and 2 others. That's more than enough." Something in her voice felt wrong. Monica caught it, that particular note of desperation, but dismissed it. Jihai loved her nephew fiercely. She wouldn't put him at risk. The morning of the outing, the air felt tense, electric. Tyler was quieter than usual as he loaded them into the SUV, the 2 additional guards. Younger men whose names Monica didn't know, kept their hands near their weapons. "Is everything all right?" Monica asked Tyler as they pulled into traffic. "Standard precautions." But his jaw was tight, his eyes constantly scanning. The museum was perfect for Ijun. Interactive exhibits in Korean and English, tactile displays he could touch, spaces designed with sensory needs in mind. He held Monica's hand in Jihai's, his face bright with curiosity. For an hour, Monica let herself believe in normalcy. Watched Ijun paint with traditional brushes, giggling when the ink splattered. Listened to Jihai tell stories about their grandmother, her voice warm with memory. Then everything shattered. They were heading back to the car, Ijun chattering happily in Korean, when Monica caught the wrongness. A black sedan idling across the street, engine running. 2 men in the museum entrance who'd been watching them too closely. Tyler sensed it a heartbeat later. "Get in the car now." The crack of gunfire was a physical punch to Monica's chest. Time fractured into brutal, crystalline moments. Tyler shoving her and Ijun behind the SUV, Jihai screaming. The acrid smell of cordite and burning rubber. The sound of bullets punching through metal. Tyler returned fire, his movements efficient and deadly. The younger guards flanked them, weapons drawn, shouting into their radios. More shots. The sedan's windshield exploding. A man dropping to the pavement. Ijun was pressed against Monica's chest, his hands over his ears, his whole body shaking. She covered him with her body, her own terror a living thing clawing at her throat. Then Tyler had them moving, hustling them into the SUV, as tires squealed and more gunfire erupted. The vehicle lurched forward, and Monica caught a glimpse through the rear window. 2 bodies on the pavement, Tyler's jaw set in grim satisfaction, the museum entrance now a war zone. They drove in silence. Ijun had gone completely nonverbal, rocking in Monica's arms. Jihai was pale as death, tears streaming down her face. Tyler spoke into his phone in low, urgent Korean. "We're 3 minutes out. Secure the perimeter. Get Mr. Kim on the line." The townhouse had transformed into a fortress. Men in suits lined the street, weapons visible. Every entrance was guarded. Min-soo stood in the foyer like a statue carved from rage, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice dropping commands like guillotine blades. When he saw them, his control cracked. He ended the call and crossed the space in 3 strides, his hands framing Monica's face, his eyes wild. "Are you hurt?" "No, we're okay." But Ijun wasn't okay. He'd retreated into himself, nonverbal and trembling. Min-soo scooped him up, carrying him upstairs while murmuring soft reassurances in Korean. Monica sank onto the couch, her legs finally giving out. Tyler stood at attention, his face professionally blank despite the blood spattered on his shirt. Not his, she realized. Someone else's. They knew the route, Tyler said quietly when Min-soo returned. They knew exactly where we'd be and when. The silence that followed was suffocating. Min-soo's eyes scanned the room, calculating. "Sweep the house. Every phone, every device. Check everyone." His gaze landed on each person present, including Jihai. "Appa, you can't think." "Ji." His voice broke. "I don't know what to think. But someone told the Jade Phoenix exactly where my family would be today. The temperature in the room dropped to Arctic, and I will find out who." The search took hours. Men systematically dismantled electronics, checked cars, interrogated staff. Mrs. Cho submitted to questioning with quiet dignity. The guards were cleared one by one. Monica sat with Ijun, holding him as he rocked, singing soft Korean lullabies until his breathing finally evened. When she emerged, the sun was setting and the house felt like a tomb. She found Jihai in the kitchen, alone, her face streaked with tears. The younger woman looked up when Monica entered, and the guilt in her eyes was devastating. "It was you." Monica's voice came out hollow. Jihai crumpled. "I didn't. They said they just wanted to scare you off. That's all. Just frighten you enough to leave." The words tumbled out in a desperate rush, Korean and English mixing. "I thought you were a distraction, someone who'd get hurt or get him hurt. I thought I was protecting my family." Monica felt the blood drain from her face. "You made a deal with the people who want him dead. They promised no one would get hurt. They said they'd stage something minor, and you'd leave, and everything would go back to normal." Jihei's sobs were breaking, raw. "But then they tried to kill him. They used me to try to kill my brother." The betrayal was internal, intimate. Not an enemy from outside, but family from within. Min-soo stood in the doorway. Monica didn't know how long he'd been there, but the look on his face made her heart stop. He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and grabbed Jihai by the shoulders. For a terrible moment, Monica thought he might hurt her. Instead, he just stared at his sister like she was a stranger. "Get out." His voice was dead, empty. "Pack your things. You have 1 hour. If you're still here after that, I'll have you removed." "Oppa, please." "You put a target on Monica, on Ijun, on me. You made a deal with the same kind of people who got our sister killed." Each word fell like a stone. "You're not my family anymore." Jihai collapsed, her sobs echoing through the house. Min-soo turned and walked away, his footsteps disappearing down the hall. Monica stood frozen, torn between following him and staying with this broken woman who'd betrayed them all. In the end, she followed him. She found him in his study, standing at the window, his hands braced against the frame. His shoulders were rigid, his breathing controlled but audible. Min-soo. She was all I had left. His voice cracked. After our sister died, she was all I had left of our family. And she sold us out. Monica moved behind him, her hand settling on his back. She felt the tremor running through him, the way he was holding himself together by sheer will. I've killed men for less. I've destroyed entire organizations for betrayals smaller than this. He turned, and his face was devastated. Hollow. But I can't. She's my sister. I know. I don't know how to survive this. The confession was raw, torn from somewhere deep. I don't know how to be the man who forgives this and the man who protects what's his. I don't know who I am if I'm not both. Monica pulled him to her, and he collapsed against her like a building finally giving way. His face pressed into her shoulder, his breath hot and ragged. He didn't cry. She suspected he'd forgotten how. But his whole body shook with something too deep for tears. They stood like that as the sun set and the house fell silent, as Jihye packed her things and left in the dark, as the fortress they'd built revealed its cracks and fractures. And Monica held him, this dangerous, broken man, and knew she'd chosen right. Because someone had to hold the monster when he shattered. Someone had to love him even when he couldn't love himself. 3 a.m. The townhouse was graveyard silent, every sound amplified in the darkness. Monica lay in bed. She'd been given a room on the second floor, though she rarely used it, and stared at the ceiling. Min-soo had left hours ago. She'd heard the vehicles pulling away, the convoy heading into the night, going to war. That's what Tyler had called it when he'd stopped by her door before leaving. We're ending this, tonight. She should sleep. Should trust that the men with guns knew what they were doing. Should believe Min-soo would come back. Instead, she rose and padded downstairs in bare feet. The house was empty except for 2 guards stationed outside. Mrs. Cho had gone to her sister's for the night. Ijun was upstairs, finally sleeping after hours of Monica holding him, singing, promising safety she couldn't guarantee. Monica found herself in Tyler's security office. She didn't know what she was looking for. Comfort, maybe. Evidence that everything was under control. She found something else. It was tucked behind his desk, partially hidden by a loose baseboard. Small, black, high-tech. She recognized it from cop shows, from movies, a listening device. An FBI transmitter, if the tiny embossed letters were accurate. Monica's hands shook as she held it. Tyler, the loyal one. The man who'd protected her, who'd saved them at the museum. He was a spy. How long? How much had he heard? How much had he reported? Her mind spun with implications. Tyler had been there for everything. Every conversation, every confession, every moment Min-soo had let his guard down. She could turn it in, tell Min-soo. Watch as his trusted lieutenant was torn apart. Or, her fingers tightened on the cold metal. This was her escape, her exit. She could take this device, walk out the door, find the nearest FBI field office. Trade everything she knew for immunity, for safety. Let the good guys take down the monster. Go back to her normal life, her safe life, the life where she wasn't washing blood from a killer's hands. Min-soo's words echoed in her mind. You can leave. I'll pay your debt. I'll ensure you're safe. She could leave. This was the sign, the universe offering her an out. Monica stood there for an eternity, the device growing warm in her palm. She thought of Min-soo's kiss, tasting of whiskey and desperation. She thought of his sister's unfinished canvas. She thought of Ijun calling her sons and meme with trust in his voice. She thought of Jihye's betrayal, of the devastation on Min-soo's face when his sister shattered his world. She thought of the Jade Phoenix threatening a 5-year-old child. She thought of moral lines and impossible choices and the fact that she'd stopped recognizing herself months ago. Her breath shuddered. Then she dropped the device on the floor. The small crunch of metal and circuits beneath her heel was the loudest sound she'd ever heard. The moral line wasn't just crossed, it was obliterated. She'd just destroyed federal evidence. She'd just become complicit in obstruction of justice. She'd just chosen the monster over the light. Monica ground the device into electronic dust, then swept the pieces into the trash, covered them with paper towels, carried the whole bag outside to the bins. When she came back inside, her hands were steady. The choice was made. She was his now, completely. No escape. No redemption. Just this dark, impossible love, and the family she'd chosen to protect. Dawn came soft and gray. Monica was in the kitchen, making coffee she didn't want, when she heard the vehicle's return. She knew before she saw him. Knew from the quality of silence that followed his entrance, from the way the guards' voices dropped, from the way the air itself seemed to shift. Min-soo filled the doorway like a specter of the night. His suit was ruined, dark stains on the shirt that might have been oil or blood. The metallic, coppery scent hit her. Definitely blood, clinging to his clothes, his skin. His hair was disheveled. His knuckles were raw and split. He wasn't the man who'd kissed her. He was the monster made manifest. They stared at each other across the kitchen. Monica's hands tightened on her coffee mug. "It's done," he said finally. His voice was scraped empty, hollow. "The Jade Phoenix leadership is gone. Zhao is dead. The ones who came for you." He stopped, his jaw working. "They won't hurt anyone again." He moved to the sink, turning on the water. Stared down at his hands. The blood was crusted in the creases of his palms, under his fingernails. He'd killed with these hands. Recently. Thoroughly. Monica watched him standing there, this beautiful, terrible man, and knew he was waiting for her to run, to scream, to finally see him clearly and choose differently. She set down her mug, got a clean bowl from the cabinet, filled it with warm water, found a soft cloth, crossed the kitchen and took his hands. Min-soo's breath caught. He watched her with something like wonder, like disbelief, as she guided him to the table and sat him down, as she knelt between his legs and dipped the cloth in water. The water turned red immediately. She washed his right hand first, her touch gentle but thorough. Cleaned each finger, each knuckle, the broad expanse of his palm. The intimacy of it was staggering. She was washing away his sins and staining herself with them. She was choosing, actively and consciously, to absolve him. "You should run," he whispered. "I know. Monica, I destroyed Tyler's wire tonight." Her voice was steady, her hands never stopping their ritual. "Found it in his office. FBI transmitter. I crushed it and threw it away." Min-soo went completely still. "You what?" "I chose you." She looked up, meeting his devastated eyes. "I chose this family. I chose Ijun. And I chose you even knowing what you are. Especially knowing what you are." She finished his right hand and started on the left. The cloth was stained crimson, the water in the bowl a murky pink. "I've crossed every line I thought I had," Monica continued quietly. "I'm complicit now. In the lies, in the violence, in whatever you did tonight. There's no going back from this." His free hand touched her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "You could have used that wire to escape." "I don't want to escape." She pressed a kiss to his palm, the one she'd just cleaned, tasting soap and the faint metallic ghost of blood. "I want this. You. Us. This impossible broken family." Min-soo pulled her up, crushing her to his chest, his face buried in her hair, his body shaking with relief or grief or both. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not." Monica's arms wrapped around him, holding tight. "But you have me anyway." They stayed like that as the sun rose, two people covered in metaphorical and literal blood, clinging to each other like survivors, like sinners, like two people who'd found salvation in each other despite the darkness. When they finally pulled apart, Monica led him upstairs, helped him out of his ruined clothes, started a shower and pushed him gently inside. The water ran red for long minutes, washing away the evidence of his night. She didn't ask what he'd done, didn't need to know the details. The blood was enough. The hollow look in his eyes was enough. When he emerged, clean but still haunted, she was waiting. She'd changed his sheets, laid out fresh clothes, made the bed into a sanctuary. "Sleep," she said. "Stay with me." Monica climbed onto the bed, and Min-soo collapsed beside her, his head on her chest, her fingers in his hair. She held him as his breathing finally evened, as exhaustion claimed him, as the monster transformed back into the man. And as she lay there in the growing morning light, she understood the truth. She hadn't just chosen the darkness. She'd become part of it. The blood on his hands was on hers now. The sins he carried, she shared. The moral high ground was a distant memory. But the man sleeping in her arms, the child calling her family, the life they were building from violence and impossible love, that was real. That was hers. and she'd defend it with the same brutality he would. Weeks passed. The war ended. The Jade Phoenix was scattered, leaderless, neutered as a threat. Min-soo returned to his routines. Meetings in the city, business she didn't ask about. The townhouse breathed easier, though the shadows never fully lifted. Ijun healed slowly. He had nightmares about gunfire, but Monica held him through them, singing Korean lullabies until he calmed. He'd started painting again, using his grandmother's studio alongside Monica. His pictures were dark, violent sometimes, but she encouraged them. "Get it out," she told him in Korean. "Put the scary things on paper so they can't hurt you." Mrs. Cho watched them with knowing eyes, saying nothing but setting out extra portions at dinner. Tyler was gone. 2 days after Monica told Min-soo about the wire, his office sat untouched, as if frozen mid-breath. No one said where he'd gone, and Min-soo didn't offer an explanation. "Handled," was all he'd said, and Monica didn't ask what that meant. Monica understood it was also payment for her silence, for the choice she'd made. On a Saturday afternoon, Monica was in the studio with Ijun, both of them painting, when Min-soo entered. He was dressed casually. Jeans, a soft gray sweater that made him look almost domestic. The man, not the monster. He watched them for a moment, a small smile playing at his lips. Then he spoke in Korean. "He calls you Ioma when you're not in the room." Monica's brush stilled. "Ioma. Mother. He started last week," Min-soo continued, moving into the room. "Asked me when Ioma Monica was coming today." Tears stung her eyes. Ijun looked up, his expression curious, and she smiled at him through the blur. "Kecho? Aga. Keep going, baby." Min-soo knelt beside them, his presence warm and solid. "I can't offer you a normal life, Monica." His voice was rough, quiet. "I can't promise safety or peace or any of the things you deserve. But I can offer you all of me, everything I am, my protection, my loyalty, my family." He pulled a small box from his pocket. The ring inside was a black diamond, dark as his eyes, set in platinum. It drank the light, beautiful and slightly sinister. "Marry me." Not a question, a plea, a vow. "Make this permanent. Make us a family officially. Not because you're trapped, not because you're afraid, but because you choose this, because you choose us." Monica looked at him. This dangerous, devoted man who'd shown her the depths of his darkness and loved her anyway. She looked at Ijun, his small face so hopeful. She looked at the life they'd built from ashes and blood and impossible choices. "Yes." Her voice was steady. "Sure. Yes, I'll marry you." Min-soo's control broke. He kissed her, deep and claiming, while Ijun giggled beside them and smeared paint on both their faces. The wedding was small, a fusion of traditions, Payabek ceremony, and a hanbok for Monica in deep midnight blue that made her skin glow. Min-soo in a tailored black suit. Ijun as ring-bearer, so proud he could barely contain himself. Mrs. Cho cried through the entire ceremony. The handful of guests, family, trusted associates, witnessed as they bowed to elders, as they drank ceremonial wine, as they promised themselves to each other in Korean and English. Monica wore the black diamond, and when Min-soo placed the wedding band beside it, she felt the weight of the vow. Not just the legal contract, but the spiritual one. The choice she was making to love this man, to protect this family, to stand in the darkness beside him. "You are mine now," Min-soo whispered against her lips. "Forever." "I was always yours," she whispered back. "From the moment I chose to stay." The reception was in the townhouse garden, strung with lights. Monica danced with Ijun, who'd insisted on formal lessons so he could dance with his new mother. She danced with Min-soo, his arms strong and sure around her, his eyes soft with something she'd never seen before, complete peace. The toast Ji-hai would have given as maid of honor sat empty. Her absence was a wound, but Monica and Min-soo had agreed. Some betrayals required distance before forgiveness could even be considered. Monica was laughing at something Mrs. Cho said, her face bright with joy, when the commotion started. The front door, raised voices. One of the guards arguing with someone. Min-soo was moving before Monica fully processed the threat, his hand on her wrist, pulling her behind him. The kingpin had returned, all softness evaporating in a heartbeat. A man pushed past the guards. 30s, sharp suit, official bearing. He held up credentials, his voice carrying across the garden. Korean National Intelligence Service. My name is Kang Ji-woo. I'm here for my son. The world tilted. The man's eyes found Ijun, and the resemblance was there. Subtle but unmistakable. The shape of his eyes, his mouth. I'm Ijun's father, Kang Ji-woo said in Korean, then English. His biological father. And I'm here to take him home to Korea, away from this criminal empire. Ijun had frozen, pressed against Monica's side. He didn't recognize this man, didn't know him. Min-soo's voice was ice. You're dead. You died before he was born. I was undercover. Kang's expression was professional, unyielding. Deep cover with the NIS. I couldn't risk exposing my operation even for... His voice caught. Even for her. When she was killed, I started investigating. I know everything, Kim Min-soo. Your organization, your crimes. And I have legal standing and international authority to remove Ijun from this environment. Monica's heart stopped. This was the light world, come to rip apart the darkness they'd built. You abandoned him. Min-soo's control was fracturing, rage bleeding through. You let him watch his mother die. You weren't there when he stopped speaking, when he had nightmares, when he needed. I'm here now. Kang's jaw was set. And I'm offering him a real life, safety. A father, not this. He gestured at the wedding, at the guards, at the whole beautiful, violent world, this empire built on blood. Monica felt Ijun trembling against her. She dropped to her knees, taking his small face in her hands. Ijuna, she said softly. 괜찮아. 아무도 너를 데려가지 못해. Ijun. It's okay. No one can take you without your say. But she was lying. The law could take him. Biology could take him. The light world could swallow him whole. Min-soo's hand found hers, his grip crushing. His face was devastated, the same hollow look he'd had when Ji-hai betrayed them. He was watching everything he'd built. The family, the safety, the love, threatened to crumble. Kang produced papers, custody petitions, legal documents with official seals. I'll give you time to say goodbye, but he's coming with me. Tonight. Ijun finally spoke, his voice small but clear. 집은 여기예요. Home is here. He looked up at Monica, then at Min-soo, his small hand reaching for both of them. 이게 내 가족이에요. This is my family. Monica's vision blurred. Min-soo's hand tightened on hers. Kang's expression flickered. Pain, maybe. Regret. You don't understand, son. You've been living in danger. I can give you normal. I can give you safe. I want to stay with Ioma. Ijun's voice was getting stronger, more certain. And Sam-chan. Uncle, this is my home. The standoff held, tension crackling like electricity. The wedding guests had fallen silent. The guards stood ready. Min-soo and this government agent locked in a battle for a child's future. And Monica, standing between them, realized their war wasn't over. It had only just begun. Min-soo's grip on her hand was like steel, his knuckles white. His voice, when it finally came, was quiet and lethal. You'll have to kill me before you take him. Kang's expression hardened. That can be arranged. The wedding lights swayed in the evening breeze. Ijun pressed closer to Monica, his small body shaking. The black diamond on her finger caught the light, beautiful and dark as the life she'd chosen. She'd washed the blood from a killer's hands. She'd destroyed evidence. She'd crossed every line. And now she'd fight the law itself to keep this family together. We're not giving him up, Monica said, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her. He stays with us. Kang's eyes moved to her. This black woman in a wedding hanbok, this outsider who'd somehow become the center of this criminal family. His expression was almost pitying. You married into this today. You don't understand what you've become part of. When the arrests come, and they will come, you'll go down with them. Then I go down. Her voice didn't waver. But he stays here. Min-soo's grip on her hand was like steel, his knuckles white with the force of it. His voice, when it finally came, was quiet and absolutely lethal. You'll have to kill me before you take him. Kang's expression hardened, the sympathetic mask falling away to reveal the steel beneath. That can be arranged. The wedding lights swayed in the evening breeze, their glow suddenly sinister. Ijon pressed closer to Monica, his small body shaking, his breath coming too fast. The black diamond on her finger caught the light, beautiful and dark as the life she'd chosen, the vows she'd just made. She'd washed the blood from a killer's hands. She'd destroyed evidence. She'd crossed every line that had once defined her. And now she'd fight the law itself. Fight the man who claimed biology as his weapon. To keep this family whole. Minsu's hand found her waist, pulling her and Ijon closer, creating a fortress with their bodies. His eyes never left Kang's face, and Monica recognized the look. She'd seen it that night when he'd left to eliminate the Jade Phoenix. Cold, calculating, absolutely merciless. The courts will decide, Kang said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. He was a government agent facing a crime lord on his own territory, surrounded by armed men who would kill on command. I have legal law. Minsu's voice cut through the garden like a blade. You think law matters here? You think your papers and your government credentials will protect you if you try to take him? You're threatening an NIS agent. I'm protecting my family. Minsu's voice dropped to something lethal and quiet. And I will burn this world down before I let you walk out of here with him. Kang's hand moved toward his jacket. For a weapon, for more papers, it didn't matter. Sejin and 3 other guards had weapons drawn in a heartbeat, the garden transforming from wedding venue to war zone in the space of a breath. Enough. Monica's voice cut through the tension. She looked at Kang, this man who claimed fatherhood after years of absence. You want what's best for him? Then look at him. Really look. Kang's eyes moved to Ijun, and something in his expression cracked. He was nonverbal for 2 years, Monica continued, her voice steady, relentless. He had nightmares every night. He couldn't be touched without panicking. He rocked until his body bruised. He was drowning, and you weren't there. I was. You were doing your job. Your noble, important job. Her voice was acid. While he was here learning to speak again, learning to laugh, learning to trust, we gave him that. This family, this criminal, blood-stained, impossible family, gave him back his voice. Ijun's hand tightened in hers. So take your papers, Monica said quietly. Take your legal standing and your government authority. But know this, if you try to take him, you'll have to tear him from the only home he knows. You'll have to break him all over again. And we will fight you. In court, in the streets, with everything we have. The standoff held, the guards, the government agent, the crime lord and his new wife, standing between a child and the law that claimed to protect him. Silence. The garden held its breath. I can't let you just take him, Kang said finally. But maybe. He looked at Ijun, at the way the child clung to Monica and Minsu, at the family they'd become. Maybe we can find another way. Monitored visits, conditions, something that gives him stability but lets me. He swallowed hard. Lets me know my son. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't victory. It was the razor's edge between 2 impossible choices. Minsu's voice was cold steel. You will never take him from this house. You will never be alone with him. And if you ever put him at risk again, I will end you. Nis badge or not. Kang's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Agreed. The guards lowered their weapons. Sejin holstered her gun but didn't relax. Ijun looked up at Monica, his eyes huge and frightened. Do I have to go? No, baby. She pulled him into her arms, her voice breaking finally. You never have to go. This is your home. Forever. His arms wrapped around her neck, and he pressed his face into her shoulder, his small body shaking with relief. Minsu's hand settled on both of them, heavy and possessive and protective. His eyes met Kang's across the garden, and the message was clear. This is my family. Challenge that again, and law won't save you. The wedding was over. The celebration had died. But Monica stood there in her midnight blue hanbok, holding the child who called her mother, feeling her husband's hand steady against her back, and knew one absolute truth. Their war wasn't over. It had only just begun. But they would fight it together. The man, the monster, the woman who'd chosen darkness, and the child they'd all die to protect. Forever. Thank you for watching, my loves. If this story pulled you into the shadows with me, hit like, subscribe, and tell me your thoughts below. Every comment helps this story reach the people who need it. Rest your heart for now, because the next story goes even deeper. And trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next.